Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ship floating outside his viewport. The thing was 3 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. Its surface gleamed like liquid metal, covered in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. After 6 months of traveling through space, this was not what he expected to find. "Captain, they're sending another message," said Dr. Lisa Martinez, looking up from her screen. She had been trying to understand the alien language for the past 4 hours. Her dark hair was messy from running her hands through it whenever she got frustrated. "What do they want now?" Jake asked. He was tired of this conversation already. The aliens had been very polite, but they kept asking for the same thing over and over. The same thing as before. They want us to join their galactic confederation. They're offering us protection, advanced technology, and trade with 800 other worlds. Lisa paused and looked at her notes. "In exchange, we give them control of our military, let them watch over our government, and send them 30% of everything we make." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "So they want us to give up being human in exchange for some fancy toys?" "That's not how they see it," Lisa said. "According to their records, every species they've met has been grateful for the offer. They say it brings peace and prosperity to everyone." Through the CUM system, the alien voice spoke again. It sounded like music mixed with the noise of breaking glass. Lisa listened carefully and translated. "The Supreme Counselor wants to know if we've made our decision yet. He says this is the most generous first offer they've ever made to a new species." Jake walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the alien fleet. There were 12 ships out there, each one capable of destroying his small exploration vessel with a single shot. But that didn't change his answer. "Tell them no," he said. Lisa blinked. "Captain, maybe we should discuss this with Earth first. Admiral Harrison should know about this offer." "We already discussed it with Earth. The answer was no then, and it's no now." Jake turned to face his crew. "Does anyone here want to give up our freedom for their protection?" A bridge crew looked at each other. Commander Nick Stevens, his second in command, spoke first. "I didn't join the space program to become a pet in someone else's zoo." Dr. Ben Carter nodded from his station. "The technology they're offering isn't that much better than what we're developing anyway. We'll catch up in a few years." Lisa sighed and turned back to her CUM system. She spoke slowly in the alien language, trying to make sure she got the words right. When she finished, there was a long silence from the alien ship. Finally, the musical voice came back, but it sounded confused now. Lisa translated again. "He says there must be a misunderstanding. No species has ever refused their first offer. He wants to know what more we could possibly want." "Tell him we want to stay human," Jake said. "We want to make our own choices, fight our own battles, and find our own way in the galaxy. We don't need anyone else to protect us or tell us how to live." Lisa translated again. This time, the silence lasted even longer. When the alien voice returned, it sounded worried. "He's asking if we understand what we're refusing. He says life without the Confederation is dangerous. There are hostile species out there, pirates, resource wars. He says we're too young as a species to survive on our own." Jake smiled. "Tell him humans have been surviving on our own for a very long time. We're pretty good at it." After Lisa translated, the alien voice came back immediately, speaking much faster than before. Lisa had trouble keeping up. "He's saying this is unprecedented. He needs to contact the Supreme Council. He's asking us to wait here while they discuss what to do next." "We'll wait," Jake said, "but our answer won't change." Over the next 3 days, more alien ships arrived. Jake counted 47 vessels by the time they stopped coming. Each day brought new representatives from different species, all trying to convince the humans to accept the deal. A tall, thin creature that looked like a walking stick offered them exclusive mining rights to 3 solar systems. Jake said no. A floating jellyfish thing promised them the secrets of immortality if they joined the Confederation. Jake said no. A group of beings that looked like giant butterflies offered to make Earth the vacation capital of their sector of the galaxy. Jake said no. Dr. Martinez spent hours talking with each delegation, learning about their cultures and their histories. What she discovered made her very uncomfortable. "Captain, I need to show you something," she said on the 4th day. She pulled up files on her computer. "I've been studying the histories of these species. Look at this." The screen showed pictures of different alien worlds, before and after they joined the Confederation. The before pictures showed cities with unique architecture, art that was strange and beautiful, and cultures that looked vibrant and alive. The after pictures all looked the same. Generic buildings, similar clothing, identical governmental structures. Every species that joins the Confederation ends up looking exactly like every other member species, Lisa explained. Their cultures disappear. Their art becomes standardized. Even their languages slowly change to match Confederation norms. Jake studied the images. They're not offering us membership. They're offering us assimilation. That's what I think too. But Captain, there's something else. I've been monitoring their communications, and they're getting scared. Scared? Of us? Lisa nodded. They keep talking about the human problem. They've never had a species refuse their offer before. Their entire system is based on everyone agreeing to join. If we can say no and survive, what does that mean for their other members? Before Jake could answer, the comm system activated. This time, the voice was different. Deeper, older, and somehow more frightening. Lisa listened and went pale. "Captain, that's Supreme Counselor Vexani. He's the leader of the entire Confederation. He says he's coming here personally to speak with us." "Good," Jake said. "Maybe he'll understand our answer better than his subordinates did." But as Jake watched more ships arriving in the distance, he wondered if humanity had just made the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. The aliens weren't angry yet, but they were definitely afraid. And Jake was beginning to realize that sometimes fear could be much more dangerous than anger. The small human ship sat alone in space, surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled for a first contact mission. Inside, Jake Morrison and his crew waited for whatever came next, knowing that their simple refusal to surrender their freedom had already changed the galaxy forever. They had no idea how much more it was about to change. 6 months had passed since Captain Jake Morrison first said no to the Galactic Confederation. Now, General Amy Rodriguez stood in the command center deep beneath Colorado, watching screens that showed hundreds of alien ships surrounding Earth's solar system. They formed a perfect circle around the sun, blocking every route in or out. "Status report," she said to her aide, Colonel Dan Mitchell. "Same as yesterday, General. They're not attacking, but they're not letting anyone through either. No ships in, no ships out. They've also jammed all our long-range communications. We can't even send messages to our colonies on Mars or Europa." Amy nodded. She had expected this. After Supreme Counselor Vexani visited Captain Morrison and received the same answer for the 100th time, the Confederation had decided to try a different approach. They called it a gentle correction. Amy called it a siege. "What about supplies?" she asked. "That's the good news, General. We're actually doing better than we thought we would." Commander Stevens and his team had been very busy. On another screen, Amy watched a recording from yesterday's mission. Commander Nick Stevens flew his small fighter through an asteroid field, chasing a Confederation supply ship. The alien vessel was 3 times bigger than his fighter, but it was slow and clumsy compared to the human ship. Stevens fired at the alien ship's engines just enough to disable it. Then he docked with the vessel and walked inside. The aliens inside didn't fight back. They never did. According to their records, violence was something that only happened to primitive species. They had forgotten how to deal with it. Stevens took everything useful from the ship and left the aliens unharmed but stranded. Within hours, other Confederation ships would rescue them. But the supplies Stevens took would keep human research going for another month. "How many raids this week?" Amy asked. 15 successful raids, General. Dr. Carter says we've captured enough alien technology to keep his team busy for years. In another part of the command center, Dr. Ben Carter was doing exactly that. He stood in front of a table covered with alien devices, each one more advanced than anything humans had built before. But instead of just copying them, he was doing something the Confederation had never seen before. He was making them better. "Look at this," he said to his assistant, Dr. Emma Foster. He held up a small device that glowed with blue light. "This is their standard personal shield generator. It can stop any energy weapon they use. But watch what happens when I modify the power coupling." He made a small adjustment to the device. The blue light turned green, then yellow, then bright white. "Now it's 3 times stronger than the original. And I figured out how to mount it on our ships." Emma smiled. "The Confederation isn't going to like that." "That's the idea," Ben said. "They think they can wait us out, make us desperate enough to accept their deal. They don't understand that pressure just makes humans more creative." High above Earth, in the command ship of the Confederation fleet, High Counselor Zeth Kar was learning this lesson the hard way. The mantis-like alien stood 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and compound eyes that could see in 17 different spectrums. He had been a military strategist for over 400 years, and he had never encountered anything like humans. "Report," he clicked to his subordinate, a floating creature covered in tentacles. "The siege continues, High Counselor. We have maintained complete isolation of the human system for 183 days. However, the humans continue to refuse all negotiations. Are they showing signs of desperation yet? No, High Counselor. In fact, their technology appears to be advancing at an unprecedented rate. They have somehow improved our shield technology beyond our own capabilities. They have also developed new propulsion systems based on captured equipment." Zeth Kar's compound eyes darkened. This was not how sieges were supposed to work. In his experience, isolated species became desperate within weeks. They would beg for membership in the Confederation, grateful for any relief from their suffering. "What? About their military capabilities?" "Increasing daily, High Counselor. They have reverse-engineered our weapons and created variations we have never seen. More concerning, they appear to be enjoying the challenge." That was the part that truly frightened Zeth Kar. Every other species the Confederation had encountered wanted peace above all else. They were willing to give up their independence to avoid conflict, but humans seemed to thrive on conflict. The more pressure the Confederation applied, the more creative and dangerous humans became. Back on Earth, General Rodriguez was meeting with Admiral Pete Harrison, who had arrived from the Lunar Defense Station. The older man looked tired but determined. "How are our people holding up, Amy?" he asked. "Better than I expected, Admiral. Morale is actually higher than it was before the siege started. People are working together in ways I've never seen. It's like the whole species has decided to prove we don't need anyone else." "What? About resources?" "We're becoming more efficient every day. Dr. Rivera's team has developed new recycling systems that are 90% more effective than what we had before. We're also getting very good at capturing Confederation supplies." Admiral Harrison smiled. "I heard about Commander Stevens' latest raid. He captured an entire shipment of medical supplies meant for their forward base. The aliens are starting to avoid our patrol routes," Amy said. They're having to take much longer paths to supply their own ships. It's slowing down their entire operation. What neither human knew was that their resistance was having effects far beyond the solar system. On worlds throughout the Confederation, species that had been members for centuries were asking questions they had never asked before. On Kepler Prime, a reptilian engineer named Kretek was working late in his laboratory. He had been monitoring human communications since the siege began, using skills he had learned decades ago but never used. What he heard amazed him. The humans weren't just surviving their isolation. They were growing stronger. They shared their discoveries freely with each other. They worked together without needing orders from above. They made decisions quickly and adapted to new situations faster than any species Kretek had ever studied. More importantly, they were happy. Their communications were filled with jokes, expressions of hope, and determination to remain free. Kretek tried to remember the last time he had heard such joy in Confederation communications. He couldn't. For the first time in his long life, Kretek began to wonder what his own people had given up when they joined the Confederation 200 years ago. They had gained safety and prosperity, but had they lost something more valuable? He wasn't the only one asking such questions. Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds, beings who had never questioned Confederation membership were starting to think dangerous thoughts. If humans could say no and survive, what did that mean for everyone else? In the command ship above Earth, Zethkar received a message that made his worst fears come true. Intelligence reports indicated that 17 different member worlds had requested access to human communication intercepts. Another 12 worlds had submitted formal questions about the exact terms of their own membership agreements. For the first time in over 3,000 years, the Confederation was facing something they had never prepared for. Species that had been loyal members for centuries were beginning to ask if they wanted to remain members at all. The humans had been isolated for 6 months, surrounded by the largest fleet in galactic history. They should have been desperate, frightened, and eager to surrender. Instead, they had become an inspiration to half the galaxy. Zethkar realized that the siege had failed before it even began. Humans weren't becoming weaker. They were becoming stronger, and worse yet, they were teaching others that strength was possible. The mantis-like strategist sent an urgent message to the Supreme Council. The human problem was spreading, and isolation would no longer be enough to contain it. 2 years had passed since the siege of Earth began. Captain Ryan Walsh piloted his small, modified ship through the dark space between star systems, running silent and invisible. His mission was simple, but incredibly dangerous. He was carrying a message from Earth to worlds that had never heard of freedom. Docked behind him sat Dr. Emma Foster, checking her translation equipment one more time. She had learned 17 alien languages in the past year, becoming humanity's expert in talking to species that the Confederation had kept separate from each other for centuries. "We're approaching the Saurian system," Ryan said quietly. "Remember, if we get caught, we know nothing about any resistance movement." Emma nodded. They both knew what happened to beings who opposed the Confederation. They simply disappeared, along with any record that they had ever existed. Their ship dropped out of faster than light, traveled near a small mining planet on the edge of the Saurian system. According to their intelligence, this world was home to beings who still remembered what life was like before the Confederation arrived. The planet looked gray and lifeless from space, covered in mining equipment and processing facilities. But Emma's sensors detected something the Confederation had missed. Hidden beneath the surface were vast cities, built in the old Saurian style, where the reptilian people maintained their true culture in secret. A message appeared on their screen, written in ancient Saurian script that Emma had learned to read. "State your business, strangers," Emma responded carefully. "We bring word from those who chose to remain free." There was a long pause. Then another message appeared, Follow the beacon. Do not deviate from the path. A small light appeared on their navigation screen, leading them toward what looked like an empty crater. As they got closer, the crater opened up, revealing a hidden landing bay carved into the rock. Inside the bay, they were met by a tall, scaled figure wearing simple work clothes instead of the standard Confederation uniform. His name was Kretek, and he had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. "You are the humans," he said in heavily accented English. "The ones who said no." "We are," Ryan replied. "And we've come to talk to others who might want to say no as well." Kretek led them through tunnels carved from living rock, past workshops, where Saurian engineers worked on projects that had nothing to do with Confederation quotas. The walls were covered with art in the old style, depicting the proud history of a people who had once ruled 12 star systems before the Confederation offered them protection. "How many of your people feel this way?" Emma asked as they walked. "More than you might think," Kretek said. "We remember what we were before, strong, independent, masters of our own destiny. The Confederation gave us safety, but they took our souls." They entered a large chamber where 30 Saurians waited, all dressed in the simple clothing of workers and miners. But Emma could see in their eyes that these were not simple laborers. These were engineers, scientists, and military leaders who had been forced to hide their true abilities. "Tell us about your people," said an elderly female Saurian. "Tell us how you survive alone." For the next 4 hours, Ryan and Emma shared everything they could about human society. They talked about democracy, about making decisions as a group instead of following orders from above. They explained how humans shared knowledge freely, how they competed with each other while still working together, how they chose their own leaders and could remove them if they failed. The Saurians listened with growing excitement. These concepts were not completely foreign to them. They had once governed themselves in similar ways before the Confederation, convinced them that such methods were primitive and inefficient. "But how do you defend yourselves?" asked a young male Saurian. "The Confederation has thousands of ships. We have seen what they do to worlds that resist. We help each other," Emma said simply. "When one human community is threatened, others come to help. We don't wait to be told what to do. We see a problem, and we fix it, and you improve their technology," added another Saurian. "We have heard reports of your modifications to Confederation equipment, things that should be impossible." Ryan smiled. "The Confederation builds things to be safe and standard. We build things to work better. When your life depends on something working, you find ways to make it work better." Over the following weeks, Ryan and Emma visited 12 different worlds. Each had its own story, its own reasons for questioning Confederation rule. The aquatic cetaceans missed their ocean cities that had been replaced by standard Confederation habitats. The crystalline silicoids had once been master builders, but now they were only allowed to construct approved designs. The gaseous nebulans had been artists and philosophers, but Confederation education had standardized their thoughts. On each world, they found small groups of beings who remembered what their people had been before. They shared human knowledge freely, teaching methods of organization, communication, and most importantly, resistance. But it was dangerous work. Confederation surveillance was everywhere, and the secret police were always watching for signs of discontent. On 3 occasions, Ryan and Emma barely escaped capture by pretending to be traders selling mining equipment. Meanwhile, on Earth, the siege continued. But humanity had long since stopped caring about the alien ships surrounding their system. Dr. Ben Carter's team had reverse-engineered so much Confederation technology that human ships were now more advanced than anything the aliens had. Commander Nick Stevens led his raiders on increasingly bold missions, not just capturing supplies, but rescuing beings from other worlds who wanted to join the human resistance. His ship, heavily modified with captured alien technology, could outrun anything the Confederation sent after it. The most important rescue came when Stevens and his team saved a former Confederation general named Vex Moore, a four-armed being. From the warrior planet Hexus, Vex Moore had been sentenced to exile for questioning orders, but Stevens intercepted the prison transport and brought him to Earth. "Your people fight like nothing I have ever seen," Vex Moore told General Rodriguez during his first briefing. "The Confederation trains its forces to follow orders and maintain formations. But humans fight like each soldier is thinking for himself." "That's because they are," Rodriguez replied. "We don't just follow orders. We think about the best way to complete the mission, and then we do it." Vex Moore nodded slowly. "This is why you terrify them. They have spent 3,000 years teaching the galaxy that individual thinking leads to chaos. But you prove that individual thinking leads to strength." In the depths of space, aboard the Confederation command ship, High Counselor Zeth Kar read intelligence reports that filled him with dread. The human infection was spreading faster than they had feared. 17 worlds had now established secret communication with the Resistance. 3 more had formally requested to renegotiate their membership terms. Most terrifying of all, Confederation military units were reporting declining morale. Soldiers from dozens of species were asking questions about why they were fighting. Some had even requested transfers away from the human blockade, claiming they did not want to participate in what they called oppression of free beings. Zeth Kar sent an urgent message to the Supreme Council. The situation was no longer containable through blockade and isolation. The humans had proven that resistance was possible, and that knowledge was spreading throughout the galaxy like a virus. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Confederation faced a choice they had never imagined having to make. They could try to crush the rebellion through force, starting the first galactic war in recorded history. Or they could admit that their system of control was failing and try to find a new way to govern the galaxy. But as Zeth Kar watched more reports of unrest and rebellion flowing in from across Confederation space, he realized that they might no longer have the power to make that choice. The humans had changed the galaxy simply by refusing to surrender their freedom. Now, the question was whether the Confederation could survive in a galaxy where freedom was possible. 3 years after humanity first said no, the galaxy erupted into war. But it was not the war anyone expected. Fleet Admiral Kate Morrison, sister of the captain who had started it all, stood on the bridge of the human flagship watching the largest space battle in galactic history unfold around her. Thousands of ships filled the space around Earth, but they were not all fighting against humanity. More than half of them were fighting for human freedom. "Status report," she called to her communications officer. "Admiral, we have confirmed participation from 67 worlds in the Liberation Fleet. The Saurians have sent their entire battle group. The Cetaceans had deployed their deep space hunters, and the Hexus warriors are requesting permission to lead the assault on the Confederation command ship." Kate smiled grimly. 3 years ago, humans had been alone in the galaxy. Now they commanded the largest alliance in galactic history, united not by conquest, but by a simple idea. Freedom was worth fighting for. The battle had begun when Supreme Counselor Vixani finally decided to end the human problem once and for all. The ancient energy being had assembled every loyal Confederation fleet and ordered them to destroy Earth and its rebellious allies. It was meant to be a quick demonstration of Confederation power, a reminder to the galaxy of what happened. To those who refused to obey. Instead, it became the end of the Confederation as the galaxy had known it. The first surprise came when the Confederation fleet arrived at Earth. They expected to face desperate human defenders and maybe a few alien sympathizers. Instead, they found a massive fleet of ships from dozens of worlds, all flying the new banner of the Independence Alliance. The second surprise came when the battle actually started. Confederation forces had been trained for 3,000 years to fight in neat formations, following orders from commanders who stayed safely behind the lines. They had forgotten how to deal with chaos-human forces attacked from every direction. At once, Captain Ryan Walsh led a squadron of mixed human and alien fighters through the Confederation fleet like a swarm of angry insects, hitting targets and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Colonel Dan Mitchell had trained alien ground forces in human tactics, teaching them to think for themselves instead of waiting for orders. But the biggest surprise came from within the Confederation fleet itself. As the battle raged, ship after ship began switching sides. Crews that had served the Confederation for decades suddenly realized they were fighting against beings who only wanted to be free. The moment that changed everything came when General Vexmore, broadcasting on all frequencies, made a speech that was heard across the galaxy. Warriors of the Confederation, his voice boomed through space. Ask yourselves this question. When did we become the oppressors we once fought against? When did we decide that freedom was too dangerous to allow? I am Vexmore of Hexus, and I choose to stand with those who remember what honor means. The four-armed general then did something unprecedented. He ordered his ship to fire on the Confederation command vessel, declaring his loyalty to the Independence Alliance. Within minutes, dozens of other ships followed his example. The carefully organized Confederation fleet dissolved into chaos as crews mutinied, commanders defected, and entire battle groups switched sides. High Counselor Zethkar watched his fleet tear itself apart and realized that the war was already lost. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had liberated it through example. In the depths of space, aboard the largest ship ever built, Supreme Counselor Vexani experienced something it had not felt in over 2,000 years. Fear. The ancient energy being had ruled the galaxy. Through careful control and the promise of safety in exchange for obedience. But humans had proven that safety without freedom was not worth having. The energy being made a decision that shocked even its closest advisors. It sent a message directly to Admiral Kate Morrison, requesting a meeting. They want to negotiate? Kate asked when she received the message. After 3 years of blockade and now a full-scale attack, they want to talk? Dr. Emma Foster, now serving as the Alliance's chief diplomatic officer, studied the message carefully. It's not a trick, Admiral. They're genuinely asking for terms. The Confederation is falling apart, and they know it. The meeting took place on a neutral station between the two fleets. Kate Morrison entered the conference room accompanied by General Amy Rodriguez, Admiral Pete Harrison, and representatives from 12 allied worlds. Across from them sat Supreme Counselor Vexani, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, along with what remained of the Confederation leadership. You have destroyed 3,000 years of peace, Vexani said, its voice like the sound of distant thunder. The galaxy will return to chaos and war. The galaxy was never at peace, Kate replied calmly. It was just silent. There's a difference between peace and oppression. What do you want? Asked High Counselor Zethkar, his compound eyes dim with defeat. Kate looked at her allies, beings from dozens of different worlds who had risked everything for the chance to be free. We want you to let go. Let every world choose for itself whether to remain in your confederation or leave. Let beings govern themselves instead of being governed by you. That will lead to war, Vexani insisted. Species will fight over resources, territory, ideology. We have prevented countless conflicts through our rule. Maybe, Kate admitted, but those will be their conflicts, their choices. You took away their right to make mistakes, but you also took away their right to succeed. General Vexmore, now representing the warrior worlds that had joined the Alliance, spoke up. Freedom is not safe, Supreme Counselor, but slavery is not life. We choose the dangerous path of liberty over the safe path of chains. The negotiations lasted for 3 days. In the end, the Confederation agreed to something that would have been unthinkable just years before. They would release any world that requested independence. They would allow free travel and communication between whole systems. They would transform from a controlling empire into a voluntary association. But the most important change was one that Supreme Counselor Vexani resisted until the very end. You want us to give up our authority completely? The energy being asked. We want you to earn it, Kate replied. For 3,000 years, you've ruled because you had the power to force obedience. Now you'll have to convince beings to follow. You willingly. You'll have to prove that your way is better, not just more powerful. 6 months later, the galaxy looked completely different. 47 worlds had declared complete independence from the Confederation. Another 100 had renegotiated their membership terms, demanding local self-government and the right to withdraw at any time. The rest remained loyal members, but even they now had rights and representation they had never possessed before. Earth, Admiral Pete Harrison, stood in his office reading reports from across the galaxy. Some worlds were struggling with their new freedom, making mistakes and learning from them. Others were thriving, rediscovering cultures and capabilities. They had forgotten during centuries of Confederation rule. There had been conflicts, as Vexani predicted. But there had also been unprecedented cooperation, as free worlds chose to work together on problems that affected them all. A message appeared on his screen from Captain Jake Morrison, the man who had started it all by simply saying no. Jake was now exploring the far edge of the galaxy, making contact with species that had never heard of either humans or the Yanziu Confederation. The message was short. Found 3 new civilizations this week. Offered them friendship and trade. They said yes. Funny how much easier it is when you're not trying to conquer anyone. Harrison smiled and looked out his window at the stars. Humanity had set out to explore the galaxy and ended up liberating it. Not through conquest or superior technology, but through something much simpler and much more powerful. They had reminded the galaxy that freedom was possible, that beings could govern themselves, and that the most dangerous thing anyone could say to a tyrant was a simple, quiet no. The galaxy was noisier now, messier, sometimes more dangerous. But it was also more alive than it had been in 3,000 years. And somewhere in the depths of space, beings who had never known freedom were learning to make their own choices, fight their own battles, and find their own way among the stars. The human revolution was complete, not because they had won a war, but because they had won something much more important. They had won the right for every being in the galaxy to be free.